Welcome to Bench Report Court Cam.
If you'll state your name for the record and spell your last name, please.
Kayla Beverly. My last name is Beverly.
All right, defense, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Miss Beverly. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm well, thank you. How old are you?
27.
And do you know Tamor McIntyre?
Yes, sir.
How do you know him?
That's my brother.
Is he your older brother, younger brother?
Younger.
How many years separate you two?
A year and a half to 2 years. It depends on when our birthday falls.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about your childhood and Tamor's. Could you tell us a little bit about your early childhood?
We were taken from our mom by CPS, and we had to live in foster homes and bounced around a lot.
How old were you when you were taken from your mother?
I believe I was 5.
5. So Tamor would have been how old?
Well, I believe that Tamar was 5 and I was about 7.
Okay, gotcha. Before that, did both your parents live in the house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did that stop at some point? You said just you were taken from your mom.
Yes, my dad was incarcerated for domestic violence against my mom.
Okay. Do you know anything about that incident? Do you remember it?
I remember seeing my mom after, like, injured.
Tell us about that.
I just remember seeing our mom afterwards. She was injured really bad after she was hospitalized. Stuff like that.
Was Tamor around for that?
Yes, sir.
And you said your father was incarcerated. Do you know if he went to prison for it?
Yes.
Okay. And so after he went to prison, did you all stay with your mother for some period of time, or did CPS get involved immediately?
For some time, maybe a couple of years, 1 or 2 years or something like that.
Just living with your mama?
Yes, sir.
What was that like?
We moved around a lot, kind of. I think she was trying to find stability, but didn't have a lot of help.
Okay. So you mentioned that eventually Child Protective Services got involved.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us more about that? What happened there?
One day they came and they took us from our mom, and we fought with them and cried. And sorry. Then they put us in a orphanage.
Okay. And you said that this was a couple years after your dad was locked up.
You can proceed.
If you need a moment, that's okay.
Thank you.
So how old do you think you were when you went to the orphanage?
I think Tamar was 5 and I was about 7. That's when they took us from our mom.
When they took you from your mom? Okay. And was that orphanage in Texas, or was that someplace else?
It was in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Do you remember the name of the orphanage?
Child Haven.
Child Haven?
Yes, sir.
And describe to the jury what Child Haven was like.
It was like it was buildings, like different buildings in a property that was gated, and like the different buildings hold different kids of different ages. So me and Tamar were separated at that place for some time, and we were allowed to get visitation with each other, but we couldn't leave there. We went to school there, we ate there, bathed there, and sleep there. And sometimes we get visits. I think we got a visit one time.
Kind of sounds like a jail. Is that fair, or is it not like that at all?
Yeah, it was. It's like a jail.
How long were you there?
As a kid, I didn't understand time, so it felt like a year, but it might have been like 6 months or something like that, close to a year.
So you're not really sure, but
No, I'm not
that's what
sure.
it felt like, I guess.
Yeah, it felt like a year.
Um, what happened to get you out of the orphanage?
Um, they placed us in a foster home. They found a foster home for us
Where was that?
in Las Vegas, Nevada, in a neighborhood, low income neighborhood.
And you and Tamor were placed together in the same home?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like living in the foster home?
Um, we weren't happy, so um, it was sad. We just wanted to go home.
Did you have any contact with your parents?
No,
Did you know what had happened to your parents?
no, it was times we didn't even know if our mom was still living.
How long were you living with that foster? Was it a family or was it a single person? Do you know?
It was I believe she was married and eventually her husband passed away. But it was a married woman.
And what was daily life like with her?
Um, if it was during the year, then we go to school and we come back after school. If no extracurricular activities, and if it wasn't during the year, then we have to be in her home at all times, not allowed to ever leave.
You couldn't leave her property?
No,
Tamor too, or just you?
neither one of us, Tamer either.
What happened if you tried to argue with her about that?
She didn't allow it, and we were young, so we didn't, we just did.
Do you feel like you were provided for there?
Um, Provided for because we ate every day and had a place to stay. So yeah,
What about your emotional needs?
no, not at all.
How long were you with this woman and her husband before he died?
Um, I believe that we were with her for up to 2 years at the most at one point, and then we got transferred somewhere else and sent back to her again. So over the years, we were with her 2 times at the length of time that we were in foster care.
So you were transferred from her care to another foster home or transferred back to the orphanage, or how'd that happen?
We were transferred to our grandfather family.
Okay, tell me about your grandfather.
He's a retired veteran. Um, I don't know his age, but he took good care of us, and he's a good man.
What's his name?
Russell Hardy
And where does he live?
in Waco, Texas.
Okay, and that's where you all went to stay after you left Las Vegas?
Yes, sir.
And Tamor came with you, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about what life was like living in Waco.
We were allowed to be kids, and we were happy for the time span that we were out there. We were happier than we ever been as a kid in foster care or any of that stuff.
How did Tamor take it living with your grandfather?
He took it better. He started to get better grades and things like that. My grandpa was more involved in his school with his teachers and stuff like that. So eventually he did start to be better, do better and be happier, like a happier kid, more um extracurricular activities and just be a kid.
And about how long did this period of time last where you lived in Waco?
Um maybe a year or so.
What happened after that?
Um they took us from our grandfather's care and sent us back to Las Vegas to Child Haven.
When you say they, who was they?
CPS.
Child Protective Services?
Yes.
So you went back to Child Haven?
Yes.
Do you know why they sent you back to Child Haven from your grandpa's house?
They never really explained it to us as kids. They just said that we would be coming back, so that it was just temporary.
Did you come back?
No.
When you got to Child Haven, the second time, how long were you there for?
Just one day.
Okay, it was just one day. What happened after that?
They sent us to the same foster home that we lived in before.
The woman that you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. What was it like when you went back to live with her?
It was the same, but I feel like this time we were older and we knew it was wrong. Like
What
we
was
learned,
wrong?
like how she would treat us.
Help me understand that more when you say how she would treat you.
Um, maybe like physically abuse us and mentally abuse us and accuse us of things we didn't do and couldn't have done, or like 24-hour surveillance for us. Like it doesn't matter. We couldn't watch TV, have a phone, or nothing like that.
So are you saying that she hit you all?
She did.
Did she hit Tamor?
She did.
When you talk about mentally abusing you, I mean, you talked about not being able to leave. Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else?
I mean, just overall, because we were young and we were kids, so it was like a weird feeling with her because we wanted her to love us, but she was always disappointed at us, and we would get accused for things that we didn't even do. So it was just like I feel like that was like mental abuse because it was like we just wanted to earn her love, like be really respectful to her and not do anything wrong, but we would still end up in trouble.
What kind of things did she accuse you of doing, or accuse Tamor of doing?
Maybe, well, it was every kid in the house, but maybe like picking at carpet, like if normal wear and tear on the carpet, if it's older, like maybe we did it, we picked it out the ground, or maybe like we scratched a scratch on a wooden furniture that's older and wear and tear. It was things like that.
You made it sound like it wasn't just you and the woman who took you in. Were there other people living in that house?
It was another other kids, they were all siblings. So three other kids that were all siblings.
Okay, were they her children, or were they also adopted?
They were not her children. They were in foster care. She ended up adopting them.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I used that word adopted a little carelessly. Y'all weren't adopted, I take it?
No,
Okay, but she had adopted other children from the foster system?
we met them the first time we lived with her. The second time that we came back, she had adopted them and changed their names and everything like that.
I see. Okay. So how long did this last where you were back with the lady in Las Vegas?
Um, not I don't want to say it was a year.
Okay.
I don't want to say it was a year.
During that time period, did you have contact with any of your biological family?
This time we were allowed to occasionally talk to maybe our grandfather or our uncle visited us before one time. And so, yeah, this time we were able to talk to family sometimes. Yeah.
Were you able to talk to your mom and dad?
Not my mom, but my dad. I don't even, not even my dad. Maybe if I received a letter, but I don't think so ever. Not
Okay.
in her care.
Um, so you said that you were there with this woman again for about a year? Is that
The second time I feel like it was less than a year.
less than a year? Okay. What happened after that?
We ended up telling a social worker about her treatment the last time we lived with her and how it was still going on this time, because this time they let us have different type of workers that come and talk to us or take us somewhere to a park or anything. So this time we were got closer with our workers and we let them know like everything that had been going on, so they switched us foster homes.
Okay. So the second time around, there were some social workers to oversee what was going on?
Right.
Okay. And based upon what you told to the social worker, what happened?
They removed us from her home,
Where'd y'all go?
a different foster home.
Okay. Tell me about that foster home.
Um, it was better. We lived there until we were not in foster care anymore,
Where was that other foster home?
in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay. And do you all have any connection to Las Vegas, Nevada, besides that they took you to Child Haven and that's where you got put into the foster system?
No,
Okay. No relatives, no distant relatives?
no.
Okay. So You said that you lived with the second foster family until you were taken out of the foster system. What happened there to get you out of the foster system?
Our dad got out of prison and we were released into his care
And where was your dad living when he was released from prison?
in Arlington, Texas.
Okay, so that's where y'all went?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about what it was like to go to be with your father at that time.
Um, at first it was supposed to be happy, but um, it was a lot of abuse and things going on.
Okay, abuse towards you, abuse towards Tamor.
Abuse towards both of us.
Tell us about it.
Um, about what he would do.
Yes.
Um, well, what do you call it? Maybe like his punishments were too big for like the thing. Like if we got bad grades, then we would be punished. Like he would. It started off by maybe the whoopings got worse and worser, and then now it's not a belt. Now it's a 2x4, and we get a certain number of hits, and and we get hit with it. And we have to lay there, and we can't get up. And it was times when Tamar was younger than me, so Tamar was younger than me, and he would cry, and just maybe they would think he was over dramatic, so they would tie him down to an ironing board, strap him down, like stuff like that.
And you said that these were examples of over disciplining you both for things in the house.
Maybe bad grades, maybe like yeah, just bad grades and stuff like that. We weren't bad kids to be doing any like going and doing anything we didn't have any business. We were too young, and we moved around a lot to know what's going on in our outside world. We were just learning, so it would be stuff like bad grades and stuff like
Were there ever any signs that you were being hurt this way or things that other people would notice?
yes,
Give me some examples.
bruises, busted lips, noses. It like um people have witnessed before.
Did any of these things ever come to the attention of your teachers or other adults outside your house?
Tamar's teacher noticed.
Okay. What happened when she noticed?
Um, I wasn't there the exact moment. A certain teacher took a like maybe noticed Tamar and built a relationship with him. And one day he had some type of bruising or something on his face. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a black eye or what, but the teacher ended up asking him, and he ended up being honest with her, and the school intervened, and they called our dad and our stepmom. Our stepmom came to the school, and they ended up talking to us saying that we can't have any contact with our dad, and they just released us to her the same day.
Okay. But she was living in the same house as your dad or no?
Yes.
Yes, she was?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened after that?
Um After that, then we went home with her, and they told Tamar we got in trouble, and they told Tamar that he had to say that he was lying.
Okay. Your dad and your stepmother pressured him to say he was making it up?
Yes.
Okay. So did CPS ever get back involved as a result of that, to your
No.
knowledge? How long did all this go on, living with your dad?
Um, until I was about 16, 17. By the time I was like 16 years old, then me and Tamar started to think about we didn't want to live with him anymore, and we wanted our mom to live with our mom.
Where was your
And
mom at this time?
I don't know where she was. We just were upset that everybody took us away from her. And then we just thought that we knew that she wasn't perfect, but just to have like wake up one day and your kids be ripped from you, or your kid or us being ripped from our mom, I felt like that wasn't helping her or us. Well, we felt like that.
So what did y'all do?
We started to think about living with our mom or just, living somewhere else around the time I was 16. And then by the time I turned 17, then we decided to leave.
So Tamor would have been how old around this time? 15, 16?
15.
Okay. You said you decided to leave.
Yes.
Did you leave?
Yes.
Where'd you go?
Um, we went to Corpus Christi with our mom after some time. Initially, we first left and we stayed here and there. And then we left Arlington to go to Corpus Christi after maybe like a month.
And that's where your mother was living?
Yes.
How long did you stay with your mom?
I stayed not even one night. I came and I brought Tamar and then I left.
Okay. So when you took Tamor down there, did you tell your dad you were taking him?
No.
All right. You were trying to get him out of the house?
I felt like if I did not take Tamar and leave, then my dad would keep hitting us and he would get in trouble eventually. Somebody would notice, there would be nothing we could do about it, or he would hurt Tamar or law enforcement would have to get involved and they would have no choice.
And last time that happened to your dad, what happened to you all?
We went to foster care.
So do you know how long Tamor was in Corpus Christi with his mom?
Um, I want to say a month maybe. I don't, or a month. It couldn't have been longer than 2 months.
Where did he go from there?
Back to Arlington, he stayed with a friend and their grandmother.
Okay. How long was he staying with them?
I'm not sure.
Did you ever get to meet the grandmother?
I don't think I never met her. I think I've been there, but she was elderly. I think I never met her.
Okay. How was Tamor behaving around that time?
Um, I mean, he was all right. How he was behaving, he liked to make music and stuff like that. So he wasn't having behavioral problems.
Okay. Now, eventually, did something happen to that older lady that you mentioned that he was living with?
She passed away.
Okay. And what happened after that for Tamor?
Um, then he went with other friends or like had to figure it out on his own after that. He bounced around a lot, didn't have a place to stay.
What was your opinion of the kind of company he was keeping after he left that older lady's house?
Um, I knew that if the circumstances were different, he probably wouldn't be around the same people.
Okay, but as far as those people are concerned, I mean, you know that some of them were drug dealers, right?
Right.
Some of them were violent.
Sustained.
What sorts of things were the people he was hanging around with like, or what were they doing?
Um, I didn't hang around them. I didn't like them. They didn't like me. So I didn't I knew that I didn't like the way they treated him sometimes or like whatever was going on.
How'd they
And
treat him?
just not those aren't your friends. I could just boil down to you can just tell some people aren't really your friends or want better for you.
Well, are you saying they took advantage of him, or are you saying that they were a bad influence, or how do you
I
mean?
feel like so because he was only 15 years old and it's a bunch of grown people who are not who are just,
So were these people older than Tamor?
yes,
Was it fair to say he was the youngest of that group of people?
yes,
And were these the types of people he was hanging around when he got arrested in Fort Worth?
yes.
Now, as far as the case in Fort Worth is concerned, are you a witness to any of the facts of that case? I mean, were you there for the case?
I was in trial.
You watched the trial?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what they're accusing him of doing specifically was?
Um, they, I know that he did not even have a weapon of any sorts, and he didn't harm anybody. And I know that he was 15 years old, and pretty much,
And you got to watch the trial unfold.
yes.
Okay. Pass the witness.
State.
Miss Beverly, I want to start off by saying, I am sorry for the abuse that you had to witness, and I don't think that any child should have to witness that, but there are some things that I have to talk to you about, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so your brother, to your knowledge, he was born in Long Beach, California, is that right?
He was born in Macomb, Mississippi.
In Mississippi? Did you guys ever live in California?
Yes.
Is that with your mother?
Yes.
Okay. And then, is your mother from California?
Yes.
All right. Now, as far as how you guys ended up in Las Vegas, is that because you moved there with your mother?
Yes.
Okay, and as a result of that, you guys ended up in the foster system in Las Vegas, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know you stated that your brother's about 2 years younger than you, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And growing up, I mean, you guys were very close, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Matter of fact, I mean, I think you would describe it as you two were kind of the only thing that each other had growing up. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so, I mean, you love your brother. That's correct, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you don't want to see anything bad happen to him.
No, ma'am.
Now regarding your father, I guess you stated when you guys went back or when you took Tamor down to Corpus Christi, you loved your dad, is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
And you didn't want him to get in any trouble for the abuse that you guys were undergoing at his hands, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you guys have kind of reconciled with your dad since then, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in fact, he was here watching the trial last week, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now regarding you, I guess when you were about 17 or 18, did you get your own apartment?
When I was 18 years old.
Okay, and that was located in Arlington, Texas, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I guess the address to that apartment, it was 2216 Plum Lane. Is that right? Complex was
Sutter Creek.
Sutter Creek. Okay. And regarding, I guess I'm gonna show you something. Well, I guess, and when you were living at that apartment complex, that's when Tamor picked up his case in Fort Worth. Is that correct?
No.
No. At some point, when Tamor picked up his case in Fort Worth, he was released from the juvenile detention center, correct?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, so when Tamor was arrested up in Tarrant County, do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, and he was in juvenile detention.
Yes.
Okay, and he got an ankle monitor, is that correct?
Yes.
And when he was released on ankle monitor, didn't he go to live with you?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was at your apartment that you had?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I want to show you. Is that your brother, as depicted on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that photo taken at your apartment or the Sutter apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, at the age of, I guess, 18, your brother, he went to go live with you and you were kind of taking care of him. Is that how you would describe it?
Yes, ma'am.
And I mean, you've done your best to be there for him, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And to provide for him, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you allowed him to live with you, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess you describe the environment that you provided for him at that time when he was on an ankle monitor as stable, right?
I described it as that.
Would you describe it as stable?
No.
But you were doing your best to provide for him as best as an 18-year-old could,
Right.
right? Okay. And so at that time when he's living with you, I guess he decides to put his ankle monitor, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so he's no longer living with you, cuts his ankle monitor, and he flees Arlington, Texas, right?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
no? Okay. And so I guess previously you would describe your brother's stature at that time as small, right? He was a smaller individual.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess at the time that you guys were living together, you previously stated that you guys were sharing an iPhone at that time. Is that correct?
That we were sharing an iPhone.
Or did you ever share a cell phone with him?
I don't even think we had phones.
Oh, okay. Do you recall an interview that you gave to Say Cheese, the social media outlet?
Do I recall it? Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall in that interview you said that you and your brother shared a phone at the time that he was living with you?
No, I don't recall.
Okay, and I'm gonna show you some photos. Okay, so who is that depicted on the screen?
Me and Tamar.
Okay, and what is that in your hand?
A phone.
Okay, and was that taken at your apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And what about there? Is that the same thing depicted?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, regarding the Fort Worth case, you said that you watched the trial up there. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess you stated that your brother didn't have a weapon. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And he didn't harm anyone. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But somebody died up there as a result of the actions of your brother and his co-defendants. Isn't that fair to say?
As a result of my brother's co-defendants.
Your brother and the co-defendants.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess you've previously spoken out because your brother's co-defendants up in Fort Worth involved two female co-defendants. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And one of them, her name was Megan. Is that correct?
I guess so. I'm not sure.
You're not sure? That's fine. But you know that there were two females involved, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess you've previously spoken out because you don't agree with the way that the court systems have handled your brother. Is that correct?
No, ma'am.
You don't agree with that?
I don't.
Okay. Now regarding the Fort Worth case, I mean, based on the evidence that you saw, isn't it true that your brother, enlisted these two females and there was an agreement for the females to enter into a drug house, unlock the door, and then allow your brother and the other co-defendants to go in there? Is that correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
She testified she witnessed the trial.
That doesn't mean
All
that she
right.
agrees with
Could
your
you all
recitation.
approach? All right, you may proceed.
Thanks, Judge. So up in Fort Worth, your brother was acting with multiple co-defendants. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that?
In the Fort Worth case, your brother had multiple co-defendants. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And the evidence in that case was that your brother and his co-defendants, the two females, entered into a drug house. They texted your brother and the other co-defendants that were not yet in the house and told them to come in, and the females unlocked the door. And at that time, your brother and his other male co-defendants entered the house to commit a robbery. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And isn't it true that your brother in that case searched the house for drugs to take?
Wrong.
No,
He
What
didn't
is-
search a house.
he was in the home. Isn't that correct?
He entered the home. Yeah.
Okay, and he admitted to the Tarrant County Police Department that he was searching for drugs during the robbery. Isn't that correct?
Oh, I don't know.
Now regarding the murder that we're here for today, When you were not in San Antonio, Texas, when that murder occurred, correct?
No, ma'am.
You were up in Arlington, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you weren't in the car, right?
No,
You have no personal knowledge as to the facts of the murder that we're here for today, right?
no.
Okay. Now, I guess earlier you kind of said something that your brother liked to make music. I guess you would describe him as like a talented musician, is that correct?
He's artistic in a lot of different ways, drawing, music.
Regarding music.
Yes, music too.
Okay. And I guess, are you familiar with the song that he wrote called The Race?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that song was released after the murder that we're here for today, correct?
Objection to 403, Your Honor.
All right, that objection will be overruled.
You can answer the question.
I don't remember the question.
The song The Race, it was released once your brother was apprehended in New Jersey, correct?
It was released after he was apprehended in New Jersey.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the song was released after the murder that occurred in San Antonio, Texas happened. Is that right?
If he was in New Jersey, then yes, ma'am. Not sure.
And I guess regarding that song specifically, I mean, the lyrics of the song is that your brother was evading police. Isn't that correct?
Is that the lyrics of the song?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
You've never heard the song before?
I have, but I mean, I can't tell you what a person meant
Okay.
unless it was me.
Well, I want to know what is your take on the lyrics? So
Objection, speculation.
All right, that objection will be sustained.
Motion to instruct the jury to disregard.
Ladies, a question has not been asked for them to disregard.
Understood, Your Honor.
and I guess at the time when your brother was in New Jersey, you're aware that he was posing in front of his wanted poster and taking pictures in front of his wanted poster, right?
I don't even think it was a wanted a poster, so I'm not sure about
Speculation as
that.
well, Your Honor.
All right, that will be overruled.
And I guess while your brother was on the run, isn't it true that SWAT went to your place looking for him multiple times?
Yes, they did.
Have you met with the defense team in preparation for your testimony today?
No, ma'am.
You've never talked with them on the phone?
About my testimony, no, ma'am.
Now,
Or sorry, I have, but I thought you were saying like about my testimony or anything like that. I've answered questions,
okay, so you guys have met.
talked on the phone.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And I guess regarding your brother, I mean, you've seen photos of him. Do you have knowledge of his affiliation with the Crips gang?
No, ma'am.
But you've seen photos of him throwing gang signs, is that correct?
Have I seen photos of him throwing gang signs?
Yeah, or videos?
We were foster kids. I don't really know a lot of gang signs myself, so I couldn't tell you what it is or.
So if there's been testimony that multiple of your family members are gang members,
They didn't raise us.
okay. So your testimony is you're just not familiar with gang signs.
I'm not.
I want to call your attention to the interview that you gave to Say Cheese. Isn't it true in that video that you said your brother be hitting them things regarding gang signs?
I said he be hitting them things.
Yeah.
I don't even recall my Say Cheese interview because I just answered questions, but I don't recall saying that.
Okay.
Not saying that I didn't.
And regarding that interview, I mean, were you paid for that interview or was it free?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you were not paid for that.
No.
So I want to talk to you about some of the people that you said your brother was hanging out with back in the Tarrant County case. Is one of those people Jalen Bell?
Can you ask that again?
Yeah, so earlier when Mr. Hunter was asking you questions, you kind of talked about some of the people that Timur was hanging out with that were a bad influence on him. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. one of the people that he was hanging out with at that time, was one of the people Jalen Bill?
Not sure, but
But you're aware that Jalen Bell and your brother were pretty close friends, correct?
yes, ma'am.
And you have personally, I mean, you've communicated with Jalen Bell before, correct?
Have I ever communicated with him before?
Through him or his girlfriend, Dara Sanders?
Um, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And sometimes they ask you for money, is that correct?
No, ma'am. I haven't talked to them in over 10 years.
So if there's a jail call saying that they've talked to you and asked you for money from your brother, that's just not accurate,
You said it's a jail call of them asking me for money or saying that they did.
saying that they did.
Well, they didn't.
Okay.
So I can't know what they said.
Now, regarding Jalen Bell, I mean, you're aware that he pled to ag robbery for his role in the aggravated robbery of Mark Saldivar, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And your social media profile or on Instagram, your social media name is at Real Special K, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And isn't it true that on your bio you still have free pimpies?
I'm not sure. I've been having the same Instagram for over 15 years.
Do you give it P5? Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a photo of your Instagram profile?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and just regarding the bio, can you read for me what it says here and here?
Free Tay-K, free pimp, long live 2 Live.
I'm tendering to defense for inspection, but I'm offering State's Exhibit P5.
Objection, improper impeachment. I mean, it
All right,
wasn't,
if I could see the exhibit P5. State, you may proceed.
So regarding your social media profile, I mean, on your bio, you have free Tay-K and free pimp, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and so you have no real interest in the family of Mark Saldivar getting justice for his death. in
objection,
brother's
Your
murder.
Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
Motion to
I've been
instruct
having the
jury
same
to
Instagram.
Excuse
disregard.
me.
Oh, sorry.
So, when either party makes an objection, just stop speaking and I'll make a ruling on it. If you don't understand my ruling and whether or not you're supposed to continue to speak or not, just ask me.
Okay.
All right, the objection is sustained.
Motion to disregard.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're to disregard the last question.
Motion for mistrial.
Denied. State, you may proceed.
Thank you. At this time, we pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, defense.
Fair to say you love your brother?
Yes, sir.
No one's suggesting that you're not hoping for something positive to happen to your brother, right?
Right.
Pass the witness.
No further question.
Is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excused from the state?
Yes, Judge.
All right, the rule has been invoked. You're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone during the pendency of the trial. All right, thank you. You may step down. Defense, call your next witness.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all the evidence that you're going to hear at this phase of the trial. I'm going to read to you the charge of the court on punishment. You do not have to memorize it. You'll be given the original when you begin your deliberation. Members of the jury, by your verdict in this case, you have found the defendant, Tamar McIntyre, guilty of the lesser included offense of murder. It is necessary that the jury assess the punishment for this offense. When a defendant is convicted of murder, the defendant may raise and prove by preponderance of the evidence that he caused the death under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause. Adequate cause means cause that would commonly produce a degree of anger, rage, resentment, or terror in a person of ordinary temper, sufficient to render the mind incapable of cool reflection. Sudden passion means passion directly caused by an arising out of provocation by the individual killed or another acting with the person killed, which passion arises at the time of the offense and is not solely the result of former provocation. The term preponderance of the evidence means the greater weight and degree of credible testimony or evidence introduced before you and admitted in evidence in this case. If you unanimously find that the defendant has proven by preponderance of the evidence that he caused the death of Mark Anthony Saldivar under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause, the special issue is to be answered by you in the affirmative. If you unanimously find that the defendant has not proven by preponderance of the evidence that he caused the death of Mark Anthony Salvador under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause, you will answer the special issue in the negative. Now, bearing in mind the foregoing instructions, if you all agree that the defendant proved by preponderance of the evidence that the defendant, having committed the offense of murder, caused the death of Mark Anthony Saldivar under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause, you must make an affirmative finding as to the special issue, and the punishment you must assess is by confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division for any term of not more than 20 years or less than 2 years. If you all agree that the defendant did not prove by preponderance of the evidence that the defendant, having committed the offense of murder, caused the death of Mark Anthony Salvador under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause, you must make a negative finding as to the special issue, and the punishment you must assess is by confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division for life or for any term of not more than 99 years or less than 5 years. You are instructed that your finding on the issue of sudden passion must be unanimous. That is, you must unanimously agree that the defendant either did or did not act under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause. In addition to imprisonment, an individual found guilty of the offense of murder may be punished by a fine not to exceed $10,000. And if you choose to assess a fine in addition to imprisonment, you will assess such fine and so state in your verdict. If you assess a fine, it is not paid to the victim or victims, if any, but it is paid into the registry of the court. If there is any evidence before you that the defendant may have committed an offense or act of misconduct other than the offense of which you have convicted him, you are instructed that you may use that evidence, if any, in assessing punishment in this case, but only if you find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed such other offense or act of misconduct, if any. In the event you have a reasonable doubt as to whether any other such acts, if in the event you have a reasonable doubt as to whether any other such offense or act of misconduct was committed, or as to whether the defendant was involved in such other offense or act of misconduct, then you will wholly disregard the evidence, if any, which may relate to any such matter. When there is a possibility for a defendant to incur multiple punishments on separate offenses, whether those sentences run concurrently or consecutively, that is, at the same time or one after another, is a decision to be made by the court. You are instructed that the defendant may testify on his own behalf if he chooses to do so. But if he elects not to do so, that fact cannot be taken by you as a circumstance against him, nor prejudice him in any way. The defendant has elected not to testify in this punishment phase of trial, and you are instructed that you cannot and must not refer or allude to that fact throughout your deliberations or take it into consideration for any purpose whatsoever. Under the instructions herein given, it will not be proper for you in determining the penalty to be assessed to fix the same by lot, chance, any system of averages, or any other method than by a full, fair, and free exercise of the opinion of the individual jurors on the evidence admitted before you. The length of time for which a defendant is in prison may be reduced by the award of parole. Under the law eligible in this case, the defendant will not become eligible for parole until the actual time served equals 1/2 of the sentence imposed, or 30 years, whichever is less. If the defendant is sentenced to a term of less than 4 years, The defendant must serve at least 2 years before the defendant is eligible for parole. Eligibility for parole does not guarantee that parole will be granted. It cannot accurately be predicted how the parole law might be applied to this defendant because the application of that law will depend on decisions made by parole authorities. You may consider the existence of the parole law. You are not to consider the manner in which the parole law may be applied to this particular defendant. Suitable forms are attached hereto for your verdict if you should care to use the same. However, such forms are not intended to influence you in any way in arriving at your verdict. In any event, your verdict must be unanimous, in writing, and signed by your presiding juror. Respectfully submitted, Judge Stephanie Boyd, 187 District Court, Bexar County, Texas. Are parties ready to proceed with closing?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, state, you may proceed.
Not all murders are created equal. That's probably the only thing that me and Mr. Hunter can agree about throughout this whole trial. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hunter is going to get up here in a couple of minutes and ask you to give the defendant 2 bodies for the price of 1. That is not justice. And you need to consider that in your deliberation. The defendant is charged with murder. His punishment range is 5 years to 99 years or life in the prison and up to a $10,000 fine. The evidence in this case does not support a sentence of less than life. The defendant has taken an active role in the death of 2 individuals, not only in this county, but in Tarrant County. And you all need to send a message to our community and to all other criminal defendants out there that they can't just come into Bexar County and
Objection,
do
Your
whatever
Honor.
they want.
Appeal to the community.
It's a plea for law enforcement.
Overruled.
Mr. Hunter is going to get up here and he's going to tell you the defendant is counting on you. But ladies and gentlemen, our community is counting on you. The family of Mark Anthony
Objection,
Saldivar
appeal
is
to
counting
community.
on you.
Overruled.
The evidence in this case does not support a finding for sudden passion at all. There's been no evidence that the defendant was acting under sudden passion. And when you are considering that, you need to look at the person or a person of ordinary temper. And what does that mean? Well, you need to look at the defendant and how he holds himself out in our community. And how is that? As a Long Beach insane Crip that goes under the moniker of Tay-K 47, that writes rap songs about evading police after committing 2 murders, that doesn't surrender himself to law enforcement, has to be apprehended in New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, that throws gang signs repping the folks and the insane Long Beach Crips. That's not a person that has an ordinary temperament. Even you heard from Dr. Fabian, he said that the defendant struggles with having an aggressive personality and he's more at risk than other individuals in our community. Now, regarding the role of parole, you may consider the existence of the parole law. The defendant's length of the sentence may be reduced by parole. And so that's something that you can consider. We don't know if he will get it. He will be eligible at halftime, and that's something that you need to consider during your deliberations.
I object to that last statement, Your Honor. That's
You may
not appropriate.
consider during your deliberations.
Overruled.
Ladies and gentlemen, your verdict changes this community, and I want you to think about the evidence that you've seen in this case. What we know is that the defendant has played a role, 1 as a party and 2 as the active shooter and 2 murders. And he's taken no accountability for it. He comes up here and he's asking you all to take sympathy on him because he had a rough upbringing. And I do sympathize with that, but that's a slap in the face to every other child of abuse that chooses to be a law-abiding citizen in our community. And it's not just 1 mistake, it's 2 intentional choices that he made. And you all need to consider that seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, the only appropriate punishment verdict in this case is life.
Right, defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Opposing counsel, may it please the court. Ladies and gentlemen, The concept of community, I think, is an important place for us to start because it tells a certain story. The state wants you to come in here and send a message to the community, and a harsh message. But how do we send a message to the community to address the sorts of systemic problems that result in someone being the victim of child abuse, being snatched up and taken away to what is essentially a carceral institution, an orphanage where they can't leave, away from their parents, that locks these people up, that puts them in foster homes where they're mistreated, that confuses them about who are their caregivers, who are their providers, that bounces them around from disaster situation to disaster situation. You can blame parents, you can blame the overarching structure, but at the end of the day, we also, I think, have to look at ourselves. We have to look at what this society does. And we can all recognize, I hope, that what Kayla Beverly testified to, that she and her brother Tamor went through as children, is not doing what we expect of the foster system, of child protective services, of moms and dads. The societal problems that we have to recognize these children are growing up in is all of our responsibility just as much as it is our responsibility here today to make a decision about how to punish Mr. McIntyre. And it's an easy fix for us to all just say, of course, man died, life for a life, life in prison, goodbye. But that doesn't answer those questions. And this isn't just a situation where we can accept that a tragedy has occurred and forget about all the things that led before. I'm not suggesting to you that what Dr. Fabian testified about in punishment in this trial is an excuse for what Mr. McIntyre did. It isn't. And of course, there are ample examples of people who have had terrible childhood backgrounds, like Tamor's, worse than Tamor's, who don't go out and commit murder. But it would be silly not to acknowledge that there is a cause and effect relationship. And to completely ignore that is all you'd be doing by giving a verdict of life in prison. You'd be abdicating any other bit of responsibility for how this tragedy played out. How it played out when he was a small child. How it played out when he was 10 years old. How it played out when he was 14 and 15. How it played out when a 16-year-old boy was expected to provide for himself and make his way in the world as though he was an adult. And it wouldn't account for the travesty that it is that we are sitting here in an adult court prosecuting a man for a felony as though he were 38 years old, 40 years old, that he should have known better, that he should have understood all of these things. And again, I'm not saying that there isn't an appreciation of right and wrong, but you understand that we have here a perfect storm of factors that ask for these kinds of things to transpire. And we need to make sure that the verdict that we deliver in this case is measured to that it acknowledges that this is a tragedy for a lot of different reasons. And only one of them was decided when that light changed from green to red on the access road of 410. That's the timing we're talking about. A decision that was made in that little span of time, impacting the rest of Mr. McIntyre's life and ending Mark Saldivar's life. And that tragedy, as I said to you in opening statement, cannot be undone. But we can avoid turning one tragedy into two. I'm asking for your mercy. I'm asking for your measured consideration of the evidence. And I'm asking you to think about some of the things that we talked about in the guilt innocence phase of this trial as well, because those are still relevant factors. Irrespective of the fact that those things didn't lead you to the conclusion that he was not guilty, let's just understand what we're talking about here. We have a 16-year-old boy in a car with a bunch of people who are 2, 3, 4 years older than him. And out of that scenario, we have this entangled romantic situation. You hear evidence that goes uncontroverted. In fact, it's after 2 or 3 attempts at trying to conceal it that we tease out of Joanna Reyes the fact that she was flirting with this man on Instagram, that she was discussing with him a very provocative photo shoot, that this was something where they have had a history together, that they know each other from back in high school. that she's blocked him for making advances on her and soliciting her for photographs in the past. And the man gets into the car, and all of a sudden, this photo shoot is called off or it's rescheduled. Okay, now that's the evidence. And the state doesn't provide you with a competing narrative of that. So even if you accept that Joanna Reyes is telling the truth, that Mr. McIntyre killed this man, and you accept that he did it for whatever reason, the bottom line is that Joanna Reyes got that man into the car, and that man had one thing and one thing only on his mind. And his decision to abort the photo shoot, to not go through with it, to act weird about it, provoked this issue. And again, I'm not trying to blame Mark for that. I just think we need to understand that Joanna Reyes shaved the tinder into the campsite. She poured the lighter fluid on the tinder, and she throws the match onto it. And now is trying to pretend that that didn't happen. And I think that that evidence is important for you all to consider for two reasons. The first is, it's the only evidence that you know about the true accounting of what happened in that car. Throughout both phases of the trial, that's the information you're possessed with. Well, in my mind, that evidence points us to sudden passion. It's the only evidence that we have about the transpirings of that car. So I would submit to you that's the great weight and preponderance of the evidence that's before you. And it suggests that there was a provocation for Mr. McIntyre's behavior. It's not a justified reason to kill somebody. It's inexcusable, losing your temper like that. But we have to couch it in terms of the whole context of what we're here to talk about. We're talking about a 16-year-old boy. We're talking about someone who doesn't have a fully formed brain. We're talking about someone whose decision-making skills and whose understanding of reality is tempered not just by post-traumatic stress from having an abusive childhood, but by the fact that he was intoxicated, or at least partially intoxicated, by the fact that he's had systemic problems with drug abuse as a child. We have to understand things as they relate to that. And we have to ask ourselves whether or not any of that should be considered at all as a matter of mitigation. This isn't some grown man who lost himself in the bottle and did something in a blackout rage. This is a child whose entire world was shaped by circumstances that were mostly out of his control. And now, at a moment where we freely acknowledge he exercised his own control and made a decision that was terrible, we're going to bring the hammer down and send him away for the rest of his life. Folks, let's try to be a more reasonable society. Let's try to make this courthouse, the juvenile justice system, child protective services, something other than a killing floor. We know that these problems are plaguing our society. We know that these problems are creating the risks and the jeopardy that these kinds of events will take place. But this is where we sit. I think it's very important that we understand that when we talk about a message to the community, it really is that. At the bottom line, what the state wants us to do is to be able to say that this is a classic example that they did their job. We put a man away for life in prison because of a brutal murder. And it's not just one, it's two. This guy's been to prison before. And he's a bad guy, and he's written rap songs, and he's a member of the Long Island or the Long Beach insane Crips. Whatever they want to say about it, there's a propagandist function to the request that they're putting to you. Don't do it. Don't be a shill for the state's own apologetics. They're asking you to whitewash over their own failures, our failures as a society. We're all in this together. And participating in it only at the end of the story, participating in it only when we get to come down and pass final judgment, is a cop-out. A message can go both ways. And I would submit to you, if we're going to send a message, that's a better one to send. Because it's very core. It's a message that communicates mercy, forgiveness, moving forward, recognizing that this person, Mr. McIntyre, is also a human being, that his dignity is just as important as the deceased, as Mark Saldivar's. That's just the reality of it. We can couch it in terms of right and wrong. We can point the finger. We can blame. But every human being has that same level of dignity. The Bill of Rights doesn't have an asterisk that says except for convicted criminals. Our founders recognized the inherent dignity of every single person. That's why we have these procedures. That's why we have these laws. And that is also why you all have such a wide range of punishment. It's a lot for you to consider. I want you to also just consider again, to go back to it, that while you have rejected self-defense, and I understand that what we are critically talking about here is a bad decision in the face of a pretty significant circumstance. Defense exhibit number 5 is still in evidence. That's still something I want you to go back and look at. And you're going to see that shattered windshield. And you're going to understand that this is what is being experienced by this boy in this moment. Are we right to say it's not good enough? That's not an acceptable reason to pull a gun on someone? Sure, I think that we can say that that's unacceptable. But we also have to understand that that's something that goes towards his decision making, and that this is a decision that happens in the blink of an eye, milliseconds. Now we're here sitting here talking about years, many, 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 many years. You've heard about Mr. McIntyre cutting his ankle monitor while on bond for a murder. You've also heard some testimony that Mr. McIntyre is not the trigger man in that case. Mr. McIntyre didn't act alone. Mr. McIntyre was in the company of older people who were bad company, who were creating problems for him. There seems to be a theme here, falling in with the wrong crowd, falling in with older people, and trying to take their direction. Before we can say that that doesn't merit any consideration and what punishment to give him, we need to be asking ourselves, where were all of us? Where were we as a society? How did we end up here? Why are we letting these types of people have to depend upon the guidance, the counsel, and the decision-making of older criminals for their only source of support, for their only guidance, for how they're brought up, for their introduction to how to intoxicate themselves, what to do with their lives, how to behave, how to create, how to express? It's not acceptable. This is a weighty choice because I fully understand everything the state's going to get up here and tell you and everything the state said. Mark is a human being. Mark was entitled to that dignity. Tamor took it from him. That's worth something. I'm not suggesting it isn't. I'm just asking you to balance that against everything else that needs to be considered. Lastly, I want to talk to you about something that's a little bit more technical. You have here a judgment from Tarrant County
Right, 2 minutes.
where Mr. McIntyre received a sentence for 55 years and then several concurrent sentences for accompanying offenses in the same transaction, which ran concurrent with that. So you understand he's serving a 55-year sentence in prison as we sit here today. Okay? I want to be clear about this. This isn't a situation where if you all express leniency and give him a low sentence, he's going to be out in a couple of years. I mean, to the extent that we can recognize that there's a valid purpose in carceral punishment for people who commit these kinds of crimes, understand that work's already been done. The issue that has to be considered is that whatever you all decide to do, the court has in its discretion the power to either run that concurrently with Tarrant County or to stack it on top of it, so that whatever you give won't begin to be served until all of that time has been satisfied, however it gets satisfied. So understand that. There's a lot of temptation in these sorts of things. It's almost like when you're negotiating for the purchase of a house and you're talking about 20,000 here and 40,000 here, and these are big numbers and they're being casually thrown around. When we're talking about something as significant as this, and what the options are 5 to 99 or 2 to 20, it's easy to start talking about numbers like 40, 30, 20, 15, 10, as if it was just no big thing. How do you mathematically quantify in your head the time that's spent in those places? And you heard testimony about what a jail's like. Try to understand. It's incumbent on you to just focus on this. Focus on this and know that there is a possibility in the court's discretion that it will be stacked. This gang stuff, don't fall for it. There's nothing to it. It's just trying to smear him in your eyes. There's no evidence that this particular group is in any way a criminal organization, just a thing on paper. And it betrays a very important fact about jail, about prison, about any kind of lockup like that, which is that it is survival of the fittest. It's a brutal place. There are no good people there to provide counsel. There is no way to get better. You have to live. You have to survive. And so, as a natural consequence of that, sometimes people join up with other groups of people. A lot of it's on racial lines. You heard that. That isn't a reason to think that Mr. McIntyre is any worse of a criminal, that he's a criminal at all, other than the things he's been convicted of. It's just a fact of life about these situations, but it gives you a glimpse into what you're sending him to. This isn't a resort. This isn't a country club. Prison is hard and it is cruel. And there are plenty of people in this world who say, well, that's how it should be. That's how it should be. But I'm sorry. The Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution demands more. It expects that people don't get raped in prison. It expects that people don't have to trade in contraband in order to not be hurt, beaten up. It expects that people won't be shivved in the shower. But we know that those things happen. That's what we're sending. So appreciate that as well. You all have given us so much of your time, so much of your patience over the course of this. And I hope that we haven't been wasting it. This is a very worthwhile thing for Mr. McIntyre. I know that when you deliberate, you will come to a fair and just sentence, one that is tempered by your compassion, by your love of your fellow man, and by your understanding that we are all in this together for good or ill. Thank you all.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. No, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be the last to speak with you. I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible. I know it's been a long 2.5 weeks for you all. But we're here for a very important matter. State of Texas versus Tamar McIntyre. I want to tell you, just start off with the charge of the court. This is what you'll receive, very similar to what you received during the guilt innocence phase. But this is what you'll receive back there, and the judge has already gone over it in the verdict forms. I've circled the part where the state believes that this is not said in passion. I've also circled a portion on the next where we're asking for life with a $10,000 fine. Very few times that you're able to come up here and argue that the individual not only has the murder that you convicted him of, but also another murder that he was convicted of. It's not very often. So when you're looking at that range of punishment of 5 to 99 years of life, let's think about that. What the lower end, 5 years. Somebody that committed 2 murders deserve that? Plus ag robberies, gang affiliation, shoot a fuckboy in his motherfucking face. Fuckboy, condoms, lube. Who's he speaking of? Is Mark that fuckboy that he shot in his motherfucking face? That family over there wonders that same thing. And he glorifies it in a song. And when he's on the run to beat the case, and then he posts it out there, glorifies this lifestyle. 5 years, that's somebody that goes in and unplugs it. A plug from the medical device supporting their wife or husband that's dying of cancer and is pain. That's murder. You intentionally and knowingly did it. That's what that is. What's in between? 5 years and 99 years of life. 20 to 40 years? Maybe. Got 55 years on his last murder. And supposedly he wasn't even the shooter. 60+ years. If you're the shooter, yeah. That seems appropriate. 60+. However, that's if you're just a shooter, not a repeater, meaning that you did 2 murders. He's done 2 murders, affiliate with 2 murders and aggravated robbery. If this doesn't call for life, then what does? Sudden passion. Remember where Mark was shot? He was flying off that car. He was shot in the shoulder. It went across his body. He was on his hands and knees. On his hands and his knees when he was shot by that man in that parking lot. Mark had to jump on that hood to get back his stuff. And I understand you couldn't agree on robbery, but there's no doubt that Mark's things were in that car. No doubt. His wallet ended up to that Mexican food restaurant, thrown about by these individuals, by Mr. Tamor McIntyre, Tay-K 47. Person of ordinary temper, Tay-K 47. Ordinary temper, anger, rage, resentment, or terror. An example of that is walking in on your spouse and they're with somebody else in your bed. You grab the gun and you shoot them. Sudden passion. You feel that. That's what sudden passion is. This is not sudden passion. Tamor's timeline of death here. July 26, 2016. Home invasion. Murder. He's on bond for murder then. He's given a chance to show that he can get on bond, be out in our community with an ankle monitor and abide by the rules. But what does he choose to do? Cut it off and let's go down to San Antonio, Texas and murder somebody. Let's go on. He doesn't get caught here in San Antonio. He runs off to New Jersey to hide away, to release his song, The Race, because he had to beat it. He had to beat this case. That's what he chose to do. He was caught there and dragged back to Tarrant County and convicted of murder and 3 different ag robberies and received 55 years for the murder, 30 years for one of the ag robberies, and pled to 2 ag robberies and got 13 years on those to run all concurrent. They're not stacked on top of each other. They're all run concurrent. They're all running at the same time. And now you convicted him of murder for the 2nd time. 3 ag robberies. He's affiliated with the Crip street gang and continuing behavior of a gangster rapper style. That's what it is. You heard the lyrics. Who really treated somebody like trash? Look at that picture. Left in a parking lot with an orange and tangerine or bottle of water and marijuana and shell casing and the grime on his hands and the grime on his pants, the dirt. Who really treated somebody like trash that day? Who didn't treat somebody like a human being? This is human. This is humane. This is what we're doing. This is humane. We're not asking for you to go out there and shoot Tamor McIntyre. We're asking you to hold him accountable. 2 murders, 3 ag robs, 5 first-degree felonies. 5. The punishment phase is to deter this kind of action from happening again. It is for punishment. He took somebody's life. He took Mark Salvador's life. We're not asking for an eye for an eye. Again, we're asking you to deter this type of behavior from other individuals wanting to be that type of individual. Big man with the gun. Walking around with a gun. If you want to talk about somebody, about the sexual innuendos that Joanne was having flirting, and then you want to talk about Tamor knowing about that's his girlfriend, and he goes into a rage because he was going to rape her because he brought the condoms and he supposedly brought lube. Well, we don't know. Why did Tamar want to set this up then? Why did he want to meet the guy that wanted to have sex with her before and she blocked him? Why? Never understood that. Why would Tamar want to meet this guy? Ask yourself that. Remember this, Tamar will one day speak, well, he'll speak to his loved ones.
Your Honor, I object. This is an insinuation about parole in some kind of way. It's improper.
All right, that'll be overruled.
We'll also walk among us one day. He will have his freedom. He will have his life. Maybe he's going to a bad place like defense counsel said, which that's what prison is. He has all those options ahead of him. He can choose to make himself better there. He can choose.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Judge. He can choose. Mark will not be able to choose any of that. He will not be able to choose to go to college. He will not be able to choose to get a degree. He will not be able to choose to use photography as a career. He will never, ever see his family ever again. They will never see him. It's a simple ask here. Is please assess a just verdict. A just verdict in this case, considering all the evidence that's been presented in front of you over the course of 2.5 weeks, is nothing less than life. Nothing less than that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all of the testimony that you're going to hear in this case. Deputy Laura will take you back to the jury room, and of course, the alternates will be placed in a separate room. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. All right, so it's the court's understanding that there is a verdict. There will not be any outbursts in this courtroom. If there are outbursts in this courtroom, you're going to be allowed, you're going to be asked to leave by the deputy. If there was a statement or something you're going to give, you're not going to be allowed to give it because you're going to be asked to leave the courtroom. Does everyone understand? And my understanding after this, Mr. McIntyre, after you're sentenced, that they want to have a victim impact. Who is going to be giving the victim impact? All right, so the advocate is going to be saying victim impact on behalf of the mother. What I can tell you in this courtroom, I always require everybody, treat everybody with respect. I know that this is a very emotional case for everyone, but I want the deputies to have an easy time this evening. And I just want everyone to please keep your emotions at this level, although I understand there's a lot of emotions going on both sides. And is Hunter on his way? All right. And what is the cause number of the case out of the other county?
I'm sorry, Judge.
What is the cause number of the case out of the other county?
County.
The judgment's back with the jury judge.
Ah,
Right here, Judge, would you like?
yes, if you can just tell me. All right. I'll just stay right there for one moment. All right, we're going to go back on the record in 2019 CR 12495, State versus Tamar McIntyre. Could I have parties announced, please?
Jason Garahan and Megan Galloway for the state yard.
John Hunter and Thomas Lane for Mr. McIntyre, Your Honor. He's present.
All right, Deputy Laura has informed me there was a buzz and that the jury has reached a verdict. Are both parties prepared to receive the verdict from the jurors?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring them in.
All rise for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the court's understanding that you've reached a verdict. Is that correct? And is that verdict unanimous? All right, Deputy Laura. Thank you. All right. It states that we unanimously find that the defendant, Tamar McIntyre, did not cause the death of Anthony Saldivar under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from adequate cause. It states that punishment to be assessed at 80 years in the prison, and there is no fine. Does anyone wish to have the jury polled?
Not from the state, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm first going to start with your unanimous decision stating that there was no finding of sudden passion. If that is your verdict, I'll need you to respond yes. Does everyone understand? We'll start on the end. Is this your verdict? I'm sorry? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Oh.
No, I'm on the back row. I'm sorry. Is this your verdict on the back row? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? With regards to the sentence of 80 years in the prison and no fine, if this is your verdict, I need you to answer yes. Does everyone understand? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict? Back row, is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have you go back to the jury room and I'll meet you back there shortly. Everyone, please rise for the jurors. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, Mr. McIntyre, the jury found you guilty of murder. Your punishment is to be assessed at 80 years in the prison. The court will give you credit for any time served. There's a $0 fine. And with regards to the other offense, State, are you requesting that to be stacked?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
All right.
Your Honor.
And I'm assuming you're against that. Is that correct?
We would just like to briefly, for the record, maintain that our argument would be that to run consecutively an 80-year sentence on top of 55.
Just one moment, counsel. Just give me one moment. Mr. McIntyre, I want you to know that I listened to all of the evidence in punishment, and thought about whether or not your sentence should be stacked. I don't know where your mom is, don't know where your father is. I know that you had a rough childhood. And I do know that these offenses occurred when you were very young. And I understand the state of the law, what people consider an adult. I listened to the testimony of the expert that was brought by defense counsel. You've already been sentenced to murder in the other county, and then you have a murder here. And the sentence for 55 years, that's a stiff sentence. This 80-year sentence is a stiff sentence. And these are cases where you have to serve half your time, and that's day for day time. And I recognize that. Hopefully you will grow, but based upon his age, based upon the number of years that he has received out of Tarrant County and the number of years that he's received here, based upon his history and the lack of any type of good parenting. From what I can tell, his mother wasn't a good parent to him. His father wasn't a good parent to him. Child Protective Services was not good. And if you believe the testimony, I don't know why Child Protective Services would place children back with a father who put the children's mother in the hospital. Is there something else that needs to be done with our society? Yes. Is more money need for Child Protective Services and their workers? Yes. And I do realize that while this is a lot of time, and I tell people all the time, any time that you do in custody is a lot of time. But by that same token, you're still alive. And what the state has said is true. You're still alive. You can still better yourself. If you end up in prison for the rest of your life, you're still alive. You still can improve yourself. Your family can still visit you. But the complainant in this case is deceased. And you need to internalize that the complainant in this case is deceased and that his family is never going to see him again. So you're going to have to make changes. And you're going to have to remove people from your life who are not a benefit in the means of making you a better person. And I do understand that sometimes people will go to prison, they join gangs because you need protection, because you're there by yourself, you're young, but you're going to have to make better choices. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to sentence him to 80 years in the prison, give him credit for any time served. There is a $0 fine. This will run concurrent with 1511547D. And is there any, I don't know if there's any restitution.
Judge, we would ask you for restitution to the family.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes. All right, did you review the document entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you do have a right to appeal as this was a jury trial. Because this is a felony conviction, you're not allowed to own or possess any weapons or ammunition. If you have a question over what a weapon or ammunition is, you'll need to speak to an attorney. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and also there's an affirmative finding of deadly weapon.
Judge, and we just ask for continued no contact order with the next.
Well, I guess I should say there should be no contact with the family outside of legal
Yes.
for the
yes.
civil matters, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
So there's to be no contact with the complainant's family outside of legal proceedings? All right. Is there anything else from either side?
Nothing from the state.
All right, Mr. McIntyre. Yes.
No, nothing else from the defense.
All right, Mr. McIntyre, there's going to be what is called a victim impact statement. I want you to listen to it, internalize what's being said. Do you understand?
Yeah.
All right, you may proceed.
On April 23rd, 2017, we spent our final day together as a family, engaged in yard work. We had just moved to a new neighborhood and into our first house a month prior. Marky had been eagerly anticipating the same, looking forward to the day the grass would grow tall enough to mow it, because it was his. While we rested, he continued to work. He was diligent and a hard-working man. He helped others when he could and was always willing to lend a hand to anyone in need. After we finished, I could see the pride in his eyes for what he had done that day. He looked happy and was excited for our new life in our new home. When he left that day, I didn't know he was giving me his last goodbyes. A hug and a kiss that will stay in my heart. I didn't know when I started to text him that I would be receiving one last response, but those would be our last words to each other. He never came back that day. My son was full of love, full of hope and ambitions. He had trust in the good nature of people. He was an entrepreneur. He had a love for the arts, music, photography, videography, people, and business. He had many passions. He was a lyricist, a photographer, and a businessman. He wrote poems, and he would synthesize and compose his own music and record his own lyrics. He was an angel to a few, but a friend to all. He was excited to build connections and help people reach their potential. He had a hand in nurturing and fostering his friends' passion for music, inspiring them to pursue careers in the music industry. This isn't a fair world, but there are rules. He put his trust in you. And when he got into that car that day, and his trust was betrayed, but he lived with hope and love in his heart, and I will carry that with me for as long as I live. My son desired to live in a city that loved him. My son desired a brighter future for himself, his family, and others. He hoped for something better than this. My youngest son, Mark Anthony Saldivar's life ended on April 23rd, 2017, at the age of 23. His dreams, ambitions, aspirations, and goals taken from him by you. He brought smiles to everyone he knew. He left his mark on all of us. I'm thankful justice prevailed so we can start the healing process.
Thanks for watching. Stick around longer and click the highlighted videos to your right. See you there.